this is how God
On the way up to Scarborough,
I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the learned, and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father.
Hi everyone, my name is Judy Heap and I belong to the Oaks Community Church. I'd like to start today by telling you one of my favourite jokes, and it's set in America. Martha and Stumpy used to go to the county fair every year, and they would watch with longing as a little aeroplane would take off into the air and then take people for a lovely ride and then bring them back down again safely. But it cost $10. And every year Stumpy would say to Martha, "Martha, can we go?" And Martha would say, "No, it's too expensive. $10 is $10. Every year this happened, year after year after year. Then one year the pilot summoned them over and said, "I've been listening to you. You've come every year and you really want to go on a flight, and I've thought of a plan." He said, "If you can go on the flight and not say a single word, you can go for free. But if you do say something, it'll cost you $10. Well, Martha and Stumpy were so excited. They agreed, and they rushed over and they got on the plane, and up it went and off into the lovely blue sky and the beautiful surrounding countryside. But then the pilot began to throw it into lots of spins and turns and Immerman turns and great big loop-the-loops, and then finally one daredevil dive, and then he came in and brought them safely back to land. And the pilot turned to Stumpy and he said, "I never thought you'd manage to stay quiet during that." And Stumpy said, "I nearly said something when Martha fell out, but $10 is $10. When Mike and I were young Christians and newly married, we read a book called Rich Christians in a World of Hunger by a man called Ronald Sider. And it really helped us with looking at our attitude to our money and possessions, and there was some very good teaching in it. Just recently I've wanted to actually look again at my attitude to money. And so the talk today is called, "What Did Jesus Say About Money?" Apparently there are over 2,000 verses in the Bible which are concerned with money, but you'll be pleased to hear we're not going to look at them all today. But it is very clear from the whole Bible that everything we have, our talents, our giftings, our family, our possessions, are all gifts from God. And this is equally true about money. So my first point is that our money is actually God's money. In Matthew 6 verse 24, Jesus says, "No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." Or in some translations this says mammon. There is no ban on earning money, on spending it, or enjoying good things, as they all come from God. But money is not a neutral, impersonal thing. It is not just secular and separate from our spiritual lives. Mammon was actually the god of wealth in Carthage, and money has the characteristics of a god. It seems to provide us with security, freedom, power, influence, status, and choice. It can inspire devotion and single-minded preoccupation. How much time do you or do I spend on our banking apps? How often do we look at them? I do realise that if you're living on a low income, frequent checkings to see that your budget's going okay is very reasonable. and I'm not referring to this. But we can become obsessed with money, even if we have much or little. And it can allow us to think that we really don't need God. In Matthew 13, verse 22, in the parable of the sower, it says this: "The seed that was sown among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful." Once we begin to serve money and do anything to get more of it, it won't be long before money becomes our master. So my second point is that you cannot serve both God and money. My third point concerns the difference between needs and wants. In Matthew 6, Jesus says in verse 25, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow, or reap, or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life?" And then the first half of verse 32 adds, "For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them." Eating, drinking, clothes. These are all things that we need. I have a friend who is very clear about the difference between needs and wants. If she really needs something new, she will pray about it and ask God to help her buy the right one, whether it is a jumper or a washing machine, whatever. I find this very challenging. In our consumer society, wants and desires have been put into our minds over and over again until we can end up seeing them as actual needs. For example, that holiday in the sun, those fashionable clothes or shoes, makeup, that new car, the bigger house, a new phone, and so on. None of these are wrong in themselves, but we have to ask ourselves, do I really need them? Retail therapy is a commonly used phrase. I feel a bit low today, I'm upset about this or that, I think I'll go shopping, or much easier, of course, go online and buy something to make myself feel better. The result is always short-lived and never answers the problem. We need to think really clearly about what we really need, weigh it up and pray about it. The second half of verse 32 is crucial. "But seek first his kingdom," God's kingdom, "and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." The Bible has a lot to say about giving to the poor and needy, and giving generously. In Matthew 6, verses 1 to 4, Jesus said, "Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honoured by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." So here it is very clear that Jesus tells us that when we give, we do it secretly and hopefully anonymously. In Luke 21, verses 1 to 4, Jesus is watching people put money into the temple treasury. It says, "As he looked up, Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. 'I tell you the truth,' he said, 'this poor widow has put in more than all the others.' All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on." I find this verse extremely challenging. The widow gave sacrificially all she had. In Luke 6, verse 34 to 38, I found another extremely challenging set of verses. "And if you lend to those for whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." This is a huge challenge. Lending tends to imply we will be repaid, but here Jesus makes it clear that we are not to expect any repayments. We may find this easy with family and friends, but Jesus challenges us further, that this should be our attitude and action even towards our enemies. So, to summarise my 4 main points about money. First, all that we have, including our money, is a gift from God. Second, is that we cannot serve God and money. The third is that God will provide us with all that we need when we seek his kingdom first. And the fourth is about how generous we are in our giving. I'm going to end with Matthew 6, verse 19 to 21. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.